Hey fellow tankers, it's Mobius Y here with another video for a World of Tanks console. Holy crap, today has a tank review! Whoa! I don't remember the last time I did one of these because I've been hardly playing the game for the last year. I seriously do not remember the last time I made a full-fledged, detailed tank review video. I'm fairly certain it was for either the Chinese mediums or when I was grinding for the T110E4. I want to say it was the Chinese mediums, but it doesn't matter. This is the first tank review in a while that I've done, and it's on the Chinese Tier 7 IS-2 heavy tank. This was a pretty interesting tank to play. For those of you who have done a lot of the Russian tech tree, the Chinese IS-2 plays a lot like the Russian Tier 7 heavy tank, the IS. They have largely the same armor models. They have the same top gun. They have a very similar turret. There's just a lot of things about them that are the same. So if you've ever done the Russian heavy tanks, or at least one of those lines, you might want to consider giving the Chinese line a go because while the tanks are largely the same, there are some subtle differences between them. Some things that are better, some things that are worse. Personally, I liked the IS-2 more than I liked the Russian IS. The things that it was better at, I liked a lot more. Personally, I felt that the IS-2 was actually a little bit more mobile than the Russian IS. The hull rotated a bit better, it seemed to accelerate a bit better and get to a top speed more quickly, and it had a higher top speed. Those things I value more so over having really big armor or having a really big gun or things like that. But there's just a lot of good things going for this tank. The tank does have less gun depression and gun elevation compared to the Russian IS, and its dispersion and aim time are pretty garbage. The dispersion is only a little bit worse than the Russian IS, so that should feel very similar right there. So my very first shot of the game that you just saw there, got very lucky with RNG. That was not aimed in at all. So first hit of the game, pretty decent hit. Absolutely getting completely lucky. As you could see, the aim time is bad. The dispersion is bad. So you really need to spend your time lining up your shots with this tank. That was my biggest frustration with this tank, and that was why I didn't play this tank for a long time. I was just so frustrated with fully aimed shots like this one on the 416 that would just miss. That one luckily went where I was pointing. Didn't really matter where it went so long as it hit a flat piece of armor on that tank, and then it was going to penetrate and do some damage. But there was so many instances where I just got so mad because they just flat out missed, and that's why I didn't play this tank for a long time. But that's kind of the tip of the iceberg as to why I procrastinated on doing this tank review, to be totally honest. Like I said, I've hardly been playing for the last year, so it feels kind of refreshing to finally get a tank review up for you guys. So this game here, I didn't think it was a very good game. Not really a heck of a lot happened. I got 3 penning shots in this fighting area down here in the southern parts of Ravaged Capital, which is where a lot of the fighting goes on with some of the heavy tanks. Some of the major pushes happen here. And I saw there was another heavy tank flanking around our side, and it was a KV-5. So I tried to ping for somebody to give me some help, and I loaded up a heat round to try and deal some damage. Once again, getting really lucky with RNG there. The shot went right underneath the gun mantlet of the KV-5, hitting it in the flat piece of armor, and the heat rounds on this tank have more than enough penetration to punch right through that flat piece of armor. That was one of the other nice things about this tank. It's got the exact same top gun as the Russian IS, but there were some subtle differences. The standard ammunition has a slightly better shell velocity, meaning the rounds will travel faster over longer distances and hit their target more quickly. But also, the premium ammunition is a heat round with much more penetration than on the standard Russian IS. Very poorly aimed shot there, bounces off the back of the KV-5. Had I actually gone into aiming view and put that where I needed it to, I probably could have taken him out much more quickly and saved our artillery. But it is what it is. Sometimes I potato as well. So as I was saying, the heat round has 250 millimeters of penetration. That is absolutely crazy for a Tier 7 heavy tank. That is getting on Tier 9 levels of standard ammo penetration. Most of the Tier 9 heavy tanks sporting something like a 100 millimeter or 122 millimeter gun have about 250 to 260 millimeters of penetration. So you're able to compete with their levels of penetration with the heat ammo on this thing. It's really nice. Being able to penetrate those hard-to-make shots, or if you need to penetrate some thicker pieces of armor that are really flat when they're facing you, you can definitely use some heat ammo in this thing. Unfortunately, switching between ammo frequently is not a very wise thing to do, because the reload on this thing is not very good, and as I said, the aim time and overall accuracy and the dispersion on the move is not very good. But a lot of the other things about this tank, as I said, I felt that they made up for it. This tank is a close-range brawler. You need to get up close to minimize the effects of your poor aim time and accuracy, so that when you can poke around a corner, most of your reticule, if not all of it, is filled up by somebody's meaty sides or just a meaty weak point that you can just punch right through and slap them with a big 390 alpha bomb. So not that great of a game there, in my opinion. I blocked a shot from the Chi-Ri, trying to block a shot for him from the Edelweiss, pulling off only 2420 damage. There's some misplays that game. Bounced a shot on the back of the KV-5, blocked a shot from a friendly Chi-Ri onto an enemy Edelweiss. Things happen. The intention was there, but I did not execute it very well whatsoever, as you can see in that gameplay. So that's just a first look at the IS-2. We'll do some more gameplay a little bit later once we look into some stats. As I said, this tank actually boots around pretty good. It's fairly mobile. It excels in areas where the ground is quite flat and where you can use corners, because the frontal armor profile is really not that great for Tier 7. A lot of Tier 7s will just punch right through your front, so you got to use side scraping and hull down tactics to the best of your ability, especially side scraping, because hull down is still not very good either, due to the fact that this tank's turret has a very big commander's hatch on top, not like the Russian IS, which has a very flat top on the turret, so it's a lot harder to penetrate when it's hull down. But let's take a look at some stats on the IS-2. We're going to take a look at the tech tree first. The IS-2, as you can see, it branches right off of the Tier 6 Type 58 medium tank in the Chinese tech tree. There's not a lot of lines in the Chinese tech tree. Everything comes off the Type T-34 from Tier 5, and both the medium and heavy lines branch off the Type 58 from Tier 6. So the heavy line really starts at Tier 7 with the IS-2. The Type 58 is a great tank to play. It shouldn't take any time whatsoever. Whichever line you're going down for, spend the extra time in the Type 58, grind out enough XP so that you can research both of the Tier 7 tanks that branch off of it. It is definitely worth it, because both of the Tier 7 tanks are pretty decent. Now, the IS-2 itself, we're going to take a look at its packages. The stock package here, you get a 100mm gun, a V210 engine, and a radio that honestly are all in the medium tank line. So this is stuff that you should already have. The very first package that you might be able to jump to on the bottom here has an engine upgrade that is also in the medium tank line, and you also get a radio enhancement. From that, you jump up to the next package again. You get the 12150LS engine. Now, this is straight out of the medium tank line. This is actually on the T-34-2 Tier 8 medium tank. So this package should be fairly cheap if you have done the medium line before. If not, it will help you with a future grind down the medium line. So these bottom two packages, if they cost any XP, they should be fairly cheap in both XP and purchasing costs. As you can see here on the T-34-2, the 12150LS is actually one of the top engines. You can see it in this package here, and it also has the 122mm 37-122 JT gun. That is a very important gun because it plays a bit of a role in the heavy line as well. That's the nice thing about the Chinese tech tree, is that a lot of the packages in the heavy line have modules that carry over to the medium line, and a lot of packages in the medium line have modules that carry over to the heavy line. As you can see right here, this very first package off of the IS-2, not the bottom one, but the top one, has that 122mm 37-122 JT. So that gun, if you've done the medium line first, will already be researched. Along with the engine, you might need some extra XP to grind out for the radio upgrade, although don't quote me on that because I can't remember at this point. It was so long ago. But these three packages that I highlighted here, coming off the stock package, if you've done the medium line already, they should be fairly cheap and take you no time at all to get, if they cost any experience at all. And researching all of them will really help you with the medium line if you decide to do that down the road. This first package that would really require some upgrading, some researching, will have a track upgrade that needs XP no matter what. But again, it still uses an engine that you've already researched. Now, this other IS-2 M1944 package, again, has the 12150 LS, which is an engine upgrade from the previous package. This will already be researched, so if you have done the previous package, this next package with the engine upgrade will be 100% free if you have done the medium line previously. It will require no XP. You'll still have to pay some silver to purchase it. And this final package here gives you the 122mm upgrade. Instead of the 37-122 JT, you have the 122mm D25T. You're still sporting the 12150 LS engine, and you also have the IS-2 late turret and track upgrades with the A220 radio upgrade as well. So if you've, as I said it numerous times, if you've done the medium line previously, a lot of these packages will be very cheap. And from this last package with the 122 D25T, that's where I recommend you grind out the XP required for the 110, which will be about 85,000 experience. So this final package here, let's take a look at the hard stats right now. The engine power is only 580 horsepower. That's actually less than you get with the fully upgraded IS. So the power to weight ratio on this tank is not as good, but we'll see why the acceleration feels a little bit better. At least I think it did once we go to tanks.gg and look at the more detailed stats. As I said, the 122mm D25T, this is actually a pretty phenomenal gun in terms of its firepower capabilities. You have 4.88 rate of fire. That's how many rounds per minute you shoot. So the reload speed will be probably about 10 to 12 seconds from a fully trained crew, depending on what equipment and supplies you equip on this tank, as well as if you have crew skills like Brothers in Arms or something like that. The penetration on the standard ammunition is 175. That is very respectable for a tier 7. And again, it does 390 average alpha damage. And as I said, the heat rounds do 250 millimeters of penetration with another 390 points of alpha damage. That is a lot of penetration. That is way better than what the Russian IS gets. This tank is much more capable of performing decently well when bottom tier, strictly because of the heat penetration on these premium ammunition rounds. As I said, the aim time sucks. It's 3.4. That is really not that good. In fact, that's quite bad. And the overall accuracy is 0.46. Again, that is quite bad. I can't remember what the Russian IS has for aim time and accuracy. I know it's very similar though. We'll take a look once we go into tanks.gg a little bit later. The track traverse speed is 38 degrees per second. That's actually better than the standard IS by several degrees. So this thing can rotate its hull pretty decently quick. That's about the speed of a slow medium tank's rotation. The turret armor is not really anything to really lift an eyebrow to and go, oh, that's great. It's only 100 millimeters in the front and 90 in the sides and rear. You can get some pretty interesting bounces off of the turret, but a lot of people will just aim for your commander's hatch. The traverse speed of the turret is 28 degrees per second, so it's quite a bit lower than the track traverse. If you're trying to bring your turret around in the same direction as your tracks, you'll find that your turret is actually having trouble keeping up with your track traverse. The view range is 350 meters. That's not really very good. You do have to rely a lot on other people spotting for you, unless you mount something like coated optics on this tank, which I don't really recommend because you're better off equipping other things to improve things like your aim time and your reload speed. And the signal range is 600 meters. That's okay. Signal range doesn't really play a huge factor. Anything that's on the map that is spotting targets, you'll be able to see it on the minimap basically. So that's a quick look at the hard stats for the Chinese IS-2. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the supplies and equipment that I had on the IS-2 when I was grinding it out, as well as a brief peek at the crew skills that I had. So for the supplies, when I had the Top Gun, I brought in 18 standard AP rounds, 8 heat rounds, because they are not terribly expensive. They're a little pricey, but not terribly expensive, and only 2 high explosive. The high explosive are kind of nice for when you come across something like a Nashorn or a really lightly armored tank destroyer, and you can hit them for 500 plus damage. It's really nice to have those, but there's really no reason to carry a lot of high explosive rounds because the ammo count on this tank is not very good. It's only 28 shots total. For consumables, I just simply mounted a small repair kit, small first aid kit, and of course an automatic fire extinguisher. This thing is fairly prone to being set on fire from the sides and the rear in particular. The fuel tanks are very exposed from the sides, and the engine can be set on fire from various angles as well. but the fuel tanks are very, very vulnerable on the back side of the tank in particular. So automatic fire extinguisher, super handy, puts out fires immediately, as well as has a passive boost of reducing the chance of your tank catching fire altogether. The equipment that I mounted, as I said, trying to improve things like reload speed and aim time. So I mounted a large caliber tank gun rammer, as expected. I mounted improved ventilation and an enhanced gun laying drive. Unfortunately, this tank cannot mount vertical stabilizers, so I had to stick with the enhanced gun laying drive. It only kicks in when you are sitting still, so when you poke out, you have to stop the tank in order for the enhanced gun laying drive to actually have any effect. So the gun rammer and the improved ventilation will help lower the reload speed as much as possible, and the gun laying drive plus the improved ventilation will help with the aim time as much as possible. So you'll be able to shoot as fast as you can and aim in as fast as you can with that setup. The only other equipment that I'd really recommend would be maybe coated optics if the view range really does bug you and you're trying to spot your own targets. As I said, I don't necessarily recommend it though. It means that you have to rely on other people to spot for you, unfortunately, but it is what it is. There's really no other pieces of equipment that I would recommend putting on this tank. They're just not worth it. And crew skills, when I was grinding up the IS-2, I only had 3: repairs, sixth sense, and mentor. There was really no particular order to these. This was a fairly bare bones Chinese crew, and it's strictly for going up the Chinese heavy tank line. I intend to have another crew skill done when I finish the tier 8 tank, and a 5th crew skill done when I finished grinding up the tier 9 tank to research the tier 10 113. So nothing special in crew skills there, just sixth sense and repairs, but it served me well enough. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the detailed stats and armor viewer on tanks.gg, as well as compare the stats with the Russian IS tier 7 heavy tank as well. Okay, so here we are on tanks.gg. First, taking a look at the model viewer. Now, at first glance, you think, oh, wow, there's a 130 millimeter plating somewhere on the front, right? Well, yeah, but it's pretty much right underneath the turret ring, so it's very small. Very small, thick piece of armor there. Most of the front is either 115 millimeters thick or 100 millimeters thick, and you've also got a big plate where the driver hides behind. That's only 90 millimeters thick, so you're not going to be bouncing a heck of a lot of stuff. High penetration guns such as the German Tiger 1 or the Panther or other IS tanks, they'll easily penetrate you most anywhere you go, because as you can see on the very front here, you've only got about 140, 150 millimeters of thickness. Even over here on these side plates, you've only got about 170 effective thickness. Where the real bouncing happens is from the shape of the hull. It's shaped differently from the Russian IS, as you can see here. These plates kind of angle off to the sides a little bit. They're already pseudo pre-sloped from the front here by sloping up this way to increase their effective armor, but they're also sloped again from this kind of angle up this way. So this causes all sorts of weird ricochets. If you wiggle the tank back and forth while you're trying to brawl with somebody, it will cause them to miss where they're aiming. For example, you could have somebody aiming right here where they'd easily penetrate you, but at the last second you just rotate the tank a little bit and they either hit this thicker plating or they hit part of the turret up there right in the gun mantlet, or if you angle back this way, it again throws their aim off and causes them to shoot right into your tracks somewhere, and then your tracks absorbs the hit. As I said, this part here on the commander's hatch is very weak. It's only 90 millimeters thick. People really aim for that a lot, especially if you're hull down. You'll find that gets shot a lot. So that's why it's important to make sure you bring a med kit. The rest of the tank, not very thick. As I said, the sides and rear of the turret, 90 millimeters, so that will get penetrated for it pretty easily from almost anywhere. The sides of the tank are quite good. On the front half, you've got 100 millimeters. So if you're poking out at this kind of an angle, it's actually a pretty effective side scraper on the side armor. This is nobody's gonna go through that. And people rarely aim for these plates here, this flat plate here, where it's actually pretty easy to penetrate. People who know what they're doing will actually aim for that if you're side scraping, but not a lot of people do. So it's a pretty effective side scraper. Hull down, not so much, and it's just very vulnerable from places like the sides and rear. Even though it's 90 millimeters thick, a lot of it's very flat, and the rear itself is you're only getting about 70 millimeters of effective armor in the very back. It's only 60 millimeters thick. So look at the stats here. As I said, the dispersion on the move is not very good. It's only 0.44. and moving and traversing the tank are also fairly poor, only 0.22. The turret traverse is 0.15, so not that great. The gun elevation is only 20 degrees. That's actually worse than the Russian IS by about 5 degrees, and the gun depression is only 5 degrees. The Russian IS gets 6, so it'll be a little bit tougher for you to line up your shots. So we're going to actually compare with the Russian IS right now. We'll go back to the detailed stats. As you can see, comparing with the Russian IS, the dispersion is slightly worse when you're moving through the tank or traversing the tank. As I said, the shell velocity is slightly better, only by 20 meters per second, so nothing super noticeable, but it might come across as something super handy. The top speed is better by 3 kilometers an hour, so this thing will get around the battlefield faster once it actually gets to that top speed. The horsepower is quite a bit worse, 580 compared to the IS is 700, making the power to weight quite a bit worse. So that's why I said that it might seem like it accelerates slower. Personally, I didn't think it felt that way, and that's largely because of the terrain resistances. The terrain resistances, especially on medium terrain, so things like grass, is actually quite a bit better than the Russian IS. Sorry, that's not I'm looking at the wrong section there. This is the terrain resistance. It's quite a bit better, especially on medium terrain, than the Russian IS. As I said, hard terrain, it's a bit better. On soft terrain, like dirt, it's a bit better. Hard terrain is things like pavement. Medium terrain is things like grass. And soft terrain is things like wetlands. So it actually does get better terrain resistances. So not only will it have a bit of an easier time reaching its top speed, it'll have an easier time maintaining its top speed. These are the effective tank traverse values. As you can see, it traverses quite well on hard terrain and medium terrain, about 40 degrees per second traverse rates on the more favorable pieces of terrain. So that's why I felt this tank just felt more mobile. It could turn better, it could accelerate and slow down a little bit better, things like that. So really nice things about the tank that just felt more mobile when I played it compared to the standard Russian IS. It was just a lot more enjoyable in my personal opinion. You also get 50 more hit points when you're fully upgraded, so that's a bit better than the standard IS. Nothing spectacular, but the difference of 50 hit points can be about an engine fire or not. So that's a detailed look on tanks.gg. Now we're going to take a look at where the modules are located from pictures on WOT Info. Okay, so this first picture here from the very front, as you can see, the driver is actually quite vulnerable through that front plate. That's why you must have a med kit with you. Remember to bring this at all times on any tank you play, but it's especially important on the Chinese IS-2 because this driver will die quite a bit. Most anything that you see at your tier, and especially at higher tiers, can go through that front plate. So shooting there will cause the driver to die a lot, and you'll see that happening. The lower plate's a weak point, very easy to penetrate, and as I said previously, the commander's hatch on top of the turret is a weak point from the front, so you got to try and protect those as best as possible. From the left side, we've got the commander that can get killed from shots to the commander's hatch on top of the turret. He can also get killed from shots to the side of the turret near the back of it underneath the commander's hatch. In front of him sits the gunner. If he dies, then your crappy aim time and dispersion values become even worse. So he's definitely worth using a med kit on. There's also a weak point on the back of the turret. You'll see it better from the rear. It's a little kind of machine gun port that pokes out backwards. From the side of the tank on the back end, you can see behind those fuel tanks is a red zone. That means that if that area gets shot several times, very prone to getting set on fire. Very back of the tank, as you can see, another red zone on the very back, right in the middle. That's where the engine is. It's very vulnerable from the rear. Very easily damaged if people get behind you. Very easy to set on fire. As you can see on the turret, in the left side of the turret there, that's where the machine gun port is that I was talking about. Again, that's a pretty vulnerable point even for low tier tanks. Things like tier 5s and tier 6s can very easily penetrate you if they get behind where your turret is facing. They don't necessarily have to be behind your tank. If they're just behind your turret, they can very easily penetrate that. And of course, the very rear of the tank itself is very vulnerable. If you're trying to cripple this tank, try and aim for the right side of the turret on the back side there. That's where the ammo rack is, as you can see with all that white area there. Very easily to damage the ammo rack and then absolutely cripple this thing's reload speed. And if you want to cripple the reload speed from the right side here, you can see the loader is right in the middle of the turret. You can also hurt the loader by shooting right in the hull area that is just beneath the turret. That's where the another section of where the loader sits. You can shoot that area. If you take off the loader, this guy's this IS-2's reload speed is going absolutely out the window. And of course, the ammo rack is still vulnerable on the right side of the turret. If you find yourself facing the side of the turret there, and he's fairly hull down, you can't shoot his hull. Try to aim for the back of the turret where the ammo rack is, or just right in the middle where the loader is to cripple this guy's reload. And of course, there's more fuel tanks that can get damaged on the back side of the hull, right behind where the fuel tanks are. Very easy to get set on fire from that angle as well. So those are essentially where the modules are on the Chinese IS-2. It's very, very vulnerable from the sides and the rear, so if you do get flanked, you want to try and make sure that you turn the tank, get your front facing the enemy, and try to take hits in the frontal areas where the armor is a lot more trolly, a lot thicker as well, so you can get some crazy bounces there. So next up, we've got a game on South Coast. This is the Raine variant. I personally didn't really feel this was a great game either. I kind of played like a potato, but it wound up being one of my better games in the IS-2 in quite some time, so I decided to use this one in the gameplay. Also, because this game was in a more kind of open environment. It wasn't on something like Prokhorovka, that I really felt like sharing with you guys, because the game on Prokhorovka that I recorded was very, very piss poor for trying to showcase IS-2 gameplay, as I had to largely try sniping with this thing because they had about half their team go up the hill. So it wasn't a very good game worth sharing. In my personal opinion, this one kind of sort of, yeah, there are some long-range shots that I make that do manage to hit the target, but for the most part, instead of actually trying to battle at long range, you see me closing the gap, trying to get as close as possible to make my shots count as much as possible. This game, we're pretty top tier, so I'm simply going to be going where I expect I'll be the most useful. The west side of the map, along the coast there, basically right on the edge of town, so I decided to take my IS-2 down there. I expected some kind of fighting to go on there. Either people are going to be coming along the beach path, or they're going to be coming along from just across from me on the north side of the town and pushing down into the town, or they'll be far on my right side, where I will largely be protected from a lot of the buildings in this town area. So from here, I figured this would be the most beneficial spot where I could actually take my tank. Pushing up here, not even getting past this fence, and I get spotted by a Skoda, and I also wind up spotting a Panzer III-4. So I try to just position myself to get a quirky little side scrape position going on. I'm able to actually aim in on this guy because the gun elevation is pretty decent, and there goes most of his HP. A big boomstick like this, Tier 5 tanks do not like it. As I said, they lose all or most of their HP in a single hit. So unfortunately for that Panzer III-4, he did not have a good game. Kind of felt bad for the poor guy. He was trying to get something happening, get some spots going on for his artillery hanging out in the back there, which we just spotted, but he got taken out because of it. So looking at the artillery here, I can line up a shot on the M12. I figure I'll just pull the trigger and hope for the best, and amazingly, the shot went low enough to hit him in the hull, and I actually got a decent damage roll, able to take him out in a single shot. So barely 2 minutes into the game, in fact hitting 2 minutes just now, I've already got 2 penetrating shots, taken out one of their artillery tanks as well. So the situation's already looking quite a bit brighter for us, and it's still the very early stages of the game. So we're not really seeing anything else going on because we didn't really have any spotters come this way. So I try to poke up, take a shot at the Skoda T-24. It wasn't well aimed at all, so it goes way low and only hits him in the track, dealing track damage. I was actually surprised that one didn't completely miss, because unaimed shots like that are the bane of the IS-2. This gun has a very nasty habit of just not shooting straight, even when fully aimed. And that's why I found it so frustrating the last time I played it about a year ago. I had about 12 games in a row where even fully aimed shots were just not going where I needed them to go at all. It was so frustrating, and that's a big part of the reason why I hadn't played this tank in so long, coupled with the fact that I've hardly been playing for the last year. So it looks like the other team had nothing go this way. So that means either the rest of them are on the far right side trying to fight on that flank, which a lot of them are, as we can see from the spots that the rest of our team is getting, or they're sitting on top of the ridge by their flag trying to camp it out and wait for us to get closer so that they can pick us off and deal some damage while we're very exposed trying to make the approach. So I try to get over there, trying to just close the gap, trying to stay behind ridges and keep myself between cover and where the enemies are located, so that they can't simply damage me without me being able to retaliate. I need to close the distance. I need to minimize the effect of this gun's poor accuracy and aim time. I just need to get as close as I possibly can without taking too much, if any, damage. Excuse me. So the Tiger and the Nashorn on my right I ignore because this Archer actually has shots on me. If I'm to deal with them, this Archer will have side shots on me. I have no idea how that shot hit, to be totally honest, because technically I wasn't even aiming at him. I was aiming at the ground next to him like a potato. So I tried to peek out and get a shot on this Tiger. Tiger 1 peeks up, kindly gives me a shot into his front. The 175 millimeters of penetration on this gun easily penetrates through the Tiger 1 in the front, and I get a nice damage roll on him there. So right now he is threat number 1, so I'm just keeping my turret pointed at him, trying to look at him. I see 2 more heavy tanks spotted on my right. Got a bit of tunnel vision there on the Tiger 1 though, so these guys get some free shots on me while I put a single shot in the Tiger 1. Hammer comes in to try and flank me on the right hand side, so I put a shot into him. Try to ping people to help me out here with this hammer because I know he can easily take me out. But thankfully the OI was paying attention. Plants a nice shot into him, does a lot of damage, and takes him out. So I give him a great shot. So poking out, I was trying to get an angle on the Oni, but I saw the Nashorn was still alive. So I poke out. I figure I could take the hit from the Nashorn in order to take him out of the game, which is fine with me. Turning around, the Oni pushes right through the building and shoots me right in the face, takes out my ammo rack, and does a lot of damage to me. So I'm down to a 1 shot, unfortunately. Take a really badly aimed shot, trying to hit the little mini turret on the top of the tank. It didn't work out, so I decided, screw it, just load a heat round, see if I can damage this guy. Trying to get out of the way of my teammates so that they can shoot him as well. But too little, too late. I don't have enough HP, and he's able to get his gun down to just shoot me in the side and take me out of the game. So that game actually wound up being a cap out for the other team. They pushed in and simply beat us out by capping. But it was still moderately even from the leftover tanks there. I finished the game with over 3,000 damage, somehow netting a sniper medal, but also getting a high caliber that game. And the one that capped on the other team winds up being the Hellcat that only got 1 penetrating shot worth of damage in a very tier 7 game. Could have managed to farm a lot more damage. There was still 4 or 5 tanks on either side, but he decided, screw it, go for the win, finish off with a cap. So unfortunately our team lost that one. And a lot of it is my fault because I did not manage to keep myself alive in order to actually go back and defend the cap. I kind of played like a potato, took 2 really bad shots, one from the Oni and one from the Hammer, just so I could put a shot on the enemy Tiger 1. It was not worth it. I wound up doing about 400 damage and receiving about 600 in return, 600 or 700 damage in return. So I lost half of my HP thereabouts to get that 1 shot off. It simply was not worth it. Anyways, that's a pretty lengthy tank review. Over half an hour already, so I'm just going to cut this short now. I had some more gameplay recorded, but I'll be using it for other videos in the future. But hopefully you enjoyed this video review and gameplay of the Chinese IS-2 Tier 7 heavy tank. It's a pretty fun tank to play. If you've played the Russian IS, give this one a shot. It plays very similarly. It feels very similarly. It just seems to be a little bit more mobile with a nearly identical gun. Anyways, that'll be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a like, helps me out. And if you would like to see more World of Tanks console content, subscribe to my channel. I try to upload every Friday, every week. So hope to see you next week with another video. This has been Mobius Y for World of Tanks console. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the battlefield. Happy tanking.